is gasoline that is baked out of the Canadian tar sands, and that process of extracting it takes so much more energy that it's very similar to converting coal into gasoline. It's about twice the carbon as the easy petroleum that we've gotten out of the ground in the past. So the next step is between E85 and biodiesel, B100. Biodiesel is actually the better choice if you've got a choice between the two. And when you get into biodiesel, if you've got B100 that's soy-based or farming-based, or B100 that's out of a recycled product that is something that's already been used for its primary purpose and would be put in a landfill or down a drain or downcycled into something that doesn't produce as much value, it's better to use the recycled fuel. And then the very best, if you can get it, is any fuel that you're burning versus an electric vehicle that's charged with solar. This is going to be your cleanest, best. This is the best for the most if you're doing a privately owned vehicle. Okay, there's a lot of stuff that gets put out on energy balance, and being an engineer, how these energy balances are made, it's all about how you draw the box. And so this is the best example well-to-wheel type numbers that I have found. And so if you're looking at biodiesel, you get about 3.2 units of energy for every 1 unit of energy you put in. So it's about a 220% gain. For ethanol, and there's 2 researchers out of a field of about 20 that say that this is negative, that this is about 98%, that it's below 1. For every 1 unit you put in, you get about 98% out, or up to 1.34, so a 34% gain, which isn't great. But the other thing to look at is the dependence on foreign oil and all the nasty things that are associated with that. Almost all the ethanol is when you're changing form of one energy into another, you're changing natural gas into a liquid fuel that can be burnt in your car. Sometimes they're making it with coal, but it's making alcohol. When you look at petroleum diesel, which is almost never mentioned, the amount of energy that goes into getting you a gallon of petroleum diesel is for every 1 unit of energy you put in, you get about 84% back. And for gasoline, you get about 80% back. So the people who tell you that it's impossible to run our economy on ethanol because for every 1 unit of energy you put in, you only get 90% back, need to explain how we're getting around today in our economy with each 1 unit of energy we put in, we only get 84% back in gasoline. It really is how they're drawing the box on the numbers, not that it's impossible to transfer one form of energy to another, lose a little bit of efficiency, and still get what you need. The CO2 metric, biodiesel, this is just how many pounds per mile. You're putting out 5.8 pounds per gallon. And people might ask, okay, but a gallon doesn't really weigh that much. How am I getting, like, with petrol diesel, 26 pounds per gallon? And the carbon, when it's turning into CO2, is combining with 2 oxygens from the air. So a lot of the weight is coming from, that's making up that CO2 is coming from the air, not from the actual fuel that you're burning. But again, biodiesel is the lowest amount of CO2 per gallon that you're going to put back into the air. Vehicle to grid is an idea that works with electrical vehicles. And if I can explain this. The general idea of a smart grid is right now we produce power and people use it, and there's no communication that goes from the people who are using it back to the people who are selling it, except for a meter that might get read once every month. With a meter that's able to be read while it's being used, you can alert people when things go wrong. You can let them know when the capacity of the system might crash and brown out everybody's power. So things that can be turned off, they can be alerted to turn them off, and that will help everybody. So that's sort of a second level. The third level is where you can push power two ways, not only communication, but power. So if you bought a Volt and had a 70 horsepower generator that was your car, and it was sitting in the garage doing nothing, and a storm came in and knocked your power out, you might think, wow, I've got an emergency generator in my car, why don't I just turn the car on? But you've got a battery that would work for about 8 hours to power the normal house, so you would only have to run your car, three or four times a day to run your house. In fact, if you were running your car, you could run your whole block. So the batteries that are in these cars can store when there's extra electricity. So if the wind's blowing really hard in the middle of the night when nobody's using it, it can be charging up the cars. But if the cars are driven to work and are plugged in, and it's the middle of the day and the utility needs a little power, they could pull a little bit out of each car, so much that you wouldn't really notice it, but it would stabilize the grid, and you would be able to, for instance, if the wind wasn't blowing, use the cars to power the city long enough for the wind to come back up, power the cars back up, and let people drive home. There are, let's see, I think 95% of all cars are parked. You drive them to work, you park it, you go into work, you get out, you drive it home, you sit it in your driveway. Those cars are 10 times more power than all the power plants we have. So if the cars were sustainable and could be making electricity, we wouldn't need any power if we had the vehicles. So this is something that we've put in at the university. This is our first test drive of this, and it's 50 kW of solar with 20 stalls, and we've got the small electric cars like is out the window, and we can charge up to 37 of those. If they were all offsetting gasoline cars, we would be making enough solar power to go 376,000 miles, offset over 12,000 gallons of gasoline, 166 tons of carbon, and save almost $44,000 a year. And that pays for the solar. The efficiency we gain in offsetting the electric or the 30 mile per gallon gasoline car with an electric car makes the solar power pay back a lot quicker than trying to offset 2 cents a kilowatt hour. And because we were willing to try this, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act paid for 30% of it. They paid about $300,000 for that. Okay. So when you look at doing these changes, my call to action is to be open to change and trying new things. You need to study what you're doing and make a commitment to try something new. Even getting bus schedules and taking the bus for the first time to see if you can avoid parking is a little bit of an ordeal. And once you get into the habit of it, it's nothing. But the first time, it takes a commitment. And it takes a lot of doing small steps. Sustainability, for me, is a conundrum. There's so many inputs and so many different ways and pieces that affect each other. It's an interesting meditation to try to think about what is the best and how can I do the best for the most? Public transportation, when you can, that's the piece that if we were doing it now, we really would not be in the conundrum we're in. I mean, Iowa as a state at one time was the heaviest populated train state in the nation. There was a train track every 10 miles. You didn't have to go more than, you were always bicycle riding distance from the next train track. And if we were that way again, or with the personal rapid transit, if there was a way to, for people to share assets, the problems would be fixed. We would be off foreign oil easily. Like I said, I was personally able, we still import about 60%, and I was able to reduce my petroleum use by over 80% within 5 years. It's doable. So, questions and discussions.
About wind and the electric. I mean, that sounds like a great marriage because the wind is variable, and who cares whether it's variable overnight as long as you get your car charged by the morning.
Yes.
And so you would think that would cause utilities to be more excited about wind because it doesn't require you can stop for a while and start again and stop for a while.
Yeah, and wind is the biggest grower right now. It's I was project manager for putting in a landfill gas unit, and even that, where we were doing something that was much more sustainable than other installations, with the best available control technology laws, we were having to set a new standard for every engine that gets installed. It's the permitting is getting very, very difficult for any kind of combustion system, so it's much easier to permit wind. So it's growing quick, and having a way for it to be absorbed, the vehicle to grid is a great.
That would be a great thing. So you really expect electric to grow because now, I mean, you didn't mention like the Ford Focus next year it would be electric, and everybody seems to be in the game now.
Yeah, everybody is. In fact, but there's the Revenge of the Electric Car is the movie coming out. Yeah, and it's I guess I'm a little bit jaded because of all the. It's going to be here soon.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen.
It's always just
yeah. And yeah, it's the electric vehicles and the hybrids are really great for around town. I really like the being as efficient as you can with biofuels for long distance.
Mm-hmm. So a plug-in hybrid with a biofuel and electric around town would be just about what you want to do.
Yeah. I mean, with two people in my 40 mile per gallon Jetta, I can do 80 passenger miles per gallon, and so, which is, like you saw, the best plane fare was 60 passenger miles per gallon. So with my master's program, I have to drive out to San Francisco once a year, and the last two trips, because I could do it, I had a carpool person, I could do it better by driving than by flying. I took the extra time and drove all the way out with 30 gallons of biodiesel in my trunk. With 30 gallons of biodiesel in my trunk, I can drive from the Yoderville Biodiesel Cooperative out to the Hopeland Indian Reservation and fill up with enough to come back on 100% recycled biofuel. I don't have to even buy any soy biodiesel.
I was just thinking along those lines. We all think about how we can get people to sell one car, decrease the number of cars that they need to own, and convert the mindset to recognizing that there's a best choice for each type of needs that you have, short distance, long